mass line was first articulated by Mao Zedong during the revolution in China. The mass line can be summed up as from the masses to the masses. This is a process whereby the scattered and unsystematic ideas of the masses are concentrated through study, then propagated back to the masses until they embrace them as their own. The mass line means that revolutionaries come to learn as much as to teach. Furthermore, the mass line upholds the clear class line of Marxism fighting for communism. As Mao makes clear, the mass line did not originate with him but can be traced back to Marx. As the following essay makes clear, Lenin successfully combined the mass line in his revolutionary work. Lenin's methods of work developed in the conditions of a rapidly expanding Russian capitalism at the tail end of the 19th century. The Tsarist Russia was anxious to develop capital in order to compete with its external rivals. This process is described as follows by Victor Serge. A vast internal market is assured to it thanks to the more intensive labor of the peasants who are increasingly devoting all their time to the farming of grain crops and abandoning the local production of the fabrics, tools, etc. that they consume. Farm capital gushes and the total industrial production of Russia, valued in 1877 at 541 million rubles, rises to 1,816 million in 1897, and the stake of foreign capital in it rises to 1,500 million rubles. At the same time that Russian capital is expanding, there is a growth of the proletariat to man these new industries. Fairly quickly, from 1887 to 1897, the number of proletariats in the engineering industry goes up from 103,000 to 153,000, and in the textile industry from 309,000 to 642,000. In common with capitalism abroad, Tsarist Russia saw little need to provide for the needs of the workers. The working class was little more than beasts of burden to the emerging barons of industry. For instance, in Moscow, the textile workers in the Moscow region usually lived inside the mill itself, sleeping in the workshops. Even in the case of the best-paid workers, it was rare for a family to have use of one whole room. Several families would generally be crowded together in a single room. There was an entire population of wretched cellar dwellers in the cities. Infant mortality was frightful, and the working day was often as long as 14 hours. The growth of the proletariat and capitalist industry, coupled with the decline of the old Russian populist movement, was creating an opening for Marxist voices to be heard. If the populists contend that the evolution of capitalism in agrarian Russia is neither necessary nor probable, in the ancient rural communities they discern the embryonic forms of specifically Russian agrarian socialism. The proletariat appears to them as an important but secondary element in the revolution, and the revolution itself is conceived by them as one which must replace the autocracy by a democratic regime founded on the people's rights. However, the growing Marxist movement of Russia wasn't just guided by changing socio-economic conditions of Russia. By 1889, the Second International, which united socialist parties across Europe, had been founded. For the next quarter of a century, the Second International would spearhead the growth of both political and economic wings of the workers' movement. The jewel in the crown of the Second International was the German Social Democratic Party, SPD, which had survived 10 years of Bismarck's repression and was growing rapidly. The SPD seemingly combined a firm commitment to Marxist orthodoxy with deep roots in the German proletariat. To Russian Marxists such as Lenin, the keystone to the success of the SPD was contained in the formulations of the Erfurt program of the SPD, adopted in 1891. My line of argumentation here follows that of Lars Lee in Lenin Rediscovered. The Erfurt program was partly authored by the theoretician Karl Kautsky, who sought to popularize it. For Kautsky, the proletariat could not develop in secrecy, but needed open organizations to conduct its struggles. In this regard, the proletariat needed political freedom. Kautsky was very emphatic on this score, describing political freedom as the prerequisites of life. They are the light and the air of the labor movement. Furthermore, Kautsky believed that the proletariat should pit political demand against economic ones. Should not pit political demands against economic ones. Rather, the two cannot be separated. The economic struggle demands political rights, and these will not fall from heaven. To secure and maintain them, the most vigorous political action is necessary. The political struggle is, on the other hand, in the last instance, an economic struggle. However, this struggle is not to be conducted merely for the betterment of the proletariat's conditions. These struggles for economic and political rights were connected explicitly to the larger goal of the socialist revolution. To turn an old revisionist phrase on its head, the movement is nothing without an end. The day-to-day struggle of the working class was connected to the final goal of socialism. Kautsky sums this up by declaring that the proletariat has a goal towards which it is struggling, which it comes nearer to with every battle. Now all features of the class struggle have a meaning, even those that produce no immediately practical results. Every effort that preserves or increases the self-confidence of the proletariat or its spirit of cooperation discipline is worth the making. It was this formula that Lenin and other revolutionaries sought to transplant to Russia. In one of Lenin's earlier works, he sums up the task of Russian Marxists based on the German SPD model and the development of Russian capitalism. This passage is quoted fully below. Large-scale capitalism, on the contrary, inevitably severs all the workers' ties with the old society. With a particular locality and a particular exploiter, it unites them, compels them to think, and places them in conditions which enable them to commence an organized struggle. Accordingly, it is on the working class that the Social Democrats concentrate all their attention and all their activities. When its advanced representatives have mastered the ideas of scientific socialism, the idea of the historical role of the Russian worker, when these ideas become widespread, and when stable organizations are formed among the worker to transform the worker's present sporadic economic war into conscious class struggle, then the Russian worker, at the head of all democratic elements, will overthrow absolutism and lead the Russian proletariat, side by side with the proletariat of all countries, along the straight road of open political struggle to the victorious communist revolution. Lenin's baptism of fire in the Russian workers' movement was in the capital of St. Petersburg, which he arrived at in 1893. He quickly became involved in the social democratic group, the League for the Emancipation of the Working Class. Yet the conditions of the workers were just as miserable as in any industrial city of the Russian Empire. Not only were the conditions of workers horrible, but open organization was explicitly forbidden by the Tsarist autocracy. There were Marxist circles in the capital, but they tended to be composed largely of intellectuals and students. Lenin's future wife was involved in these circles and describes their activity by saying that most of the intellectuals those days did not know the workers well. An intellectual would come to one of the study circles and read the workers a kind of lecture. Lenin saw the need for the Marxist study circles to link up with the worker movement, to fuse with them, as it were. Lenin's wife describes Lenin's activity as he read Marx's Capital to the workers and explained it to them. He devoted the second half of the lesson to questioning the workers about their work and conditions of labor, showing them the bearing which their life had on the whole structure of society, and telling them in what way the existing order could be changed. This linking of theory with practice was a feature of Vladimir Ilyinch's work in the study circles. Gradually, other members of our circle adopted the same method. Thus, Lenin believed that socialism needed to spread its message among the workers for it to be effective. Lenin believed that workers who gained a knowledge of their class mission would become propagandists for the cause, creating their own study circles and later merging with the movement. In turn, larger and larger groups of workers would be drawn into the movement. Lenin later formulated his and similar activity as to merge our activities with the practical, everyday questions of working class life, to help the workers understand these questions, to draw the workers' attention to the most common abuses, to help them formulate their demands to the employers more precisely and practically, develop among the workers consciousness of their solidarity, consciousness of the common interests and common cause of all Russian workers as a united working class that is part of the international army of the proletariat. This meant that a Marxist agitator was not merely explaining the larger socialist mission to the proletariat, but also investigating their daily life. For instance, Lenin conducted investigations of factory legislation in order to show how these laws to the workers made it much easier to show them the connection that existed between their position and the political regime. Evidence of this study are traceable in quite a large number of articles and pamphlets which Ilyich wrote at the same time for workers, notably in the pamphlet The New Factory Act, and the articles on strikes, on industrial courts, and others. These investigations of laws and their political consequences were used by Lenin to raise the consciousness of the proletariat and lead it in a broader political struggle. What did the raising of workers' consciousness and its linkage to the political struggle concretely mean? In a slightly later work, The Task of Russian Social Democrats, Lenin says that in conducting agitation among the workers on their immediate economic demands, the Social Democrats inseparably link this with agitation on the immediate political needs, the distress and the demands of the working class, agitation against police tyranny, manifested in every strike, in every conflict between workers and capitalists, agitation against the restriction of rights of workers as Russian citizens in general, and as a class suffering the worst oppression and having the least rights in particular, Agitation against every prominent representative and every flunky of absolutism who comes into direct contact with the workers, and who clearly reveals to the working class's condition of political slavery. The workers thus, in their struggle for immediate demand, see the connection to larger political questions. In every strike, in every struggle by the workers, which was illegal in Russia, the workers would see the need to push for political freedom in Russia. At the same time, the Russian Social Democrats were not just to merely link economic struggles to larger political struggles, but to use every manifestation of tyranny to bring home their message. In a later work, What is to be Done, Lenin forcibly brought home this point. The Social Democrats' ideal should not be the trade union secretary, but the tribune of the people, who is able to react to every manifestation of tyranny and oppression, no matter where it appears, no matter what stratum or class of people it affects, who is able to generalize all these manifestations and produce a single picture of police violence and capitalist exploitation, who is able to take advantage of every event, however small, in order to set forth before his socialist conviction and his democratic demands, in order to clarify for all and every one the world historic significance of the struggle for the emancipation of the proletariat. And this was not all. Proletariat's mission could not be conducted openly as in Germany or France. Lenin saw the need for revolutionaries to know the basic rules of conspiracy. Revolutionaries should be skilled at eluding police and printing clandestine leaflets. Lenin's wife describes Lenin in this regard as follows. As a result of this going about around the worker circles, what was that the police kept a close watch on us. Of all our group, Vladimir Ilyich was the most experienced in secrecy methods of work. He knew the through yards and was a master hand at giving sleuths the slip. He taught us how to use invisible ink and how to write messages in books by a dotted code and secret ciphers. He invented all kinds of aliases. Vladimir Ilyich taught us the use of the cipher, and we coded almost half a book. Though Lenin believed it was imperative for revolutionaries to know the rules of conspiracy due to the concrete conditions of Russia, he remained committed to pushing for political freedom so that social democrats could agitate openly. The struggle of the Russian working class for its emancipation is a political struggle, and its first aim is to achieve political liberty. Lenin's activity in St. Petersburg lasted a hectic 2 years. He was arrested along with other members of the League in 1895, yet the seeds had been planted. Massive strikes rocked St. Petersburg in 1895, 1896, and 1897. For instance, a mass strike in 1896 took place under the banner of social democracy. This was a strike of textile workers in May 1896 in St. Petersburg. The members of the League, or rather those of its members who survived arrest, played a central role in the massive strike. It began as a protest against the non-payment of wages for the 3-day holiday celebrating the coronation of Nicholas II. There's a clear linking of political, against the Tsar, and economic demands, non-payment of wages. While the strikes were a success in showing how deep social democratic ideals had spread among St. Petersburg workers, they also highlighted the need for a durable national party organization to generalize the struggle. The rapid expansion and deepening of the workers' struggle had shown the lack of an all-Russian party. The workers of Russia needed a national party to help articulate their demands and help them struggle for political power. Lenin's use of the mass line showed that he saw the need to go among the masses of workers. He believed it was essential to learn their conditions of life. He also saw the need to study with them to raise theory. Yet Lenin also believed that through the day-to-day struggle for day-to-day economic demands, the workers would see the connection to larger political issues. Conducting his work, Lenin believed that activists had to know the art of conspiracy in order to elude the Tsar's police. From this work in St. Petersburg, Lenin would work to generalize the movement and build a large-scale Russian party that could and would lead the ultimate Russian Revolution.